Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. And today I'm going to be talking about a lost classic, in my opinion, the great Steve Hackett, and a forgotten album and video. This is the VHS of Steve Hackett called The Tokyo Tapes, which is, in my opinion, probably my favorite Steve Hackett concert that I've ever seen. And this had John Wetton, Chester Thompson, Ian McDonald, and Julian Colbeck as the musicians on it. It's an incredible concert. We're going to be talking about that. So if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe. Please check out my other videos. And let's start talking a little bit about Steve Hackett, and we'll kind of frame this video. So Steve Hackett, of course, I'm assuming you know, is the lead guitarist from Genesis, when Genesis, in my opinion, were at their greatest. And we're talking about from 1971 through 1977. In fact, they were my second favorite band at that time. I am a huge Genesis fan. I have other videos where I rank all their albums. As of today, I actually have exactly 60 Genesis albums. That's not a rounding it up. I really do have 60. So I'm a big fan. But by far, the greatest period of Genesis is the Steve Hackett era, 1971 through 1977. So what are you talking about, like 6 years, 7 years, right? Let's look at what they put out at that time period. Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, Selling England by the Pound, Genesis Live, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, Peter Gabriel Leaves, they come back with A Trick of the Tail, one of the greatest albums, Wind and Wuthering, and Seconds Out, and then Steve Hackett leaves. All of those albums from 1971 to 1977, boy, have things changed. Right now, 7 years, a major band doesn't even release an album. Back then, look at that discography, and it's the greatest period of their music. Genesis was something super special. I thought they were the greatest progressive rock band ever in that time period, in my opinion. Anyway, Steve Hackett leaves, and he puts out his first solo record, which is a classic called, you can't really see it right there, Voyage of the Acolyte, which is, this is in a gatefold sleeve deluxe edition. This is a tremendously excellent debut album. The guys from Genesis helped them out, and some great stuff on here, including Shadow of the Hierophant, which we'll talk about. Steve has a huge discography. I'm kind of showing some of the highlights here. But if you want to experience a lot of his stuff, you can get like a best of, which is what this is, which is called the Unauthorized Biography, Steve Hackett. And this has a great selection of stuff. He's all over the map because some of his albums he does vocals. He's not a particularly good singer, but he's okay. But he has classical albums. He's got highly progressive albums, fusion-y albums, kind of world music kind of albums. This is a really good one. This is one of his later ones called The Night Siren. I saw this tour. This is a really good one. But what Steve has done is he saw an opening that he took advantage of, which he should have. And this album is called Watch Her Disguise Genesis Revisited. And this came out, what is this, around 1996? And what he did was he realized that Genesis was, one of the biggest bands in the world, but they were playing their latter-day stuff, which was hugely commercially successful. But that period from 71 to 77 is pretty obsolete according to Genesis. They don't play that stuff. So he started redoing that classic Genesis stuff, and he released this studio record called Genesis Revisited. And he redid a lot of those classic Genesis tracks. Watch Her Disguise, Dance on a Volcano, Firth the Fifth. You could see it your own special way. I Know What I Like, Los Endos. And 2 tracks that were previously unreleased. And was pretty successful. He later on did another one called Genesis Revisited 2. And this was a 2 CD set. And he did the same thing. Guest artists, and he did a whole host of more Genesis tracks. Can Utility and the Coastline is personal favorite. And he did this, as well as at the end of it, he did some of his regular solo stuff. But those are studio records. Then he started touring it, because the only way to see that classic Genesis stuff nowadays is by either seeing Steve Hackett doing Genesis Revisited, or the musical box, which is this incredible authorized facsimile, basically, an amazing band from Canada who does those classic old Genesis shows, including the Limelight down on Broadway. This is an example, and there's a lot of these. Steve Hackett does these live releases called Genesis Revisited, live at the Royal Albert Hall. I think this was his first one. They're really good value for money. You get a CD, you get a DVD of the whole show, and this first one is tremendous. And this is just a nice variety of different tracks throughout their whole career. And his band is great. And of course, he's such a crucial part because Steve Hackett's such an amazing guitarist. And, he does soundscapes. It's mood. It's what the song needs. It's not about speed. He was doing tapping long before Eddie Van Halen did it. But it's not about speed. It's what works in the song. And if you watch my greatest guitar solos of all time, in the top 5 or even in the top 3 is Firth the Fifth from Steve Hackett. But what are we going to focus on here is this Tokyo tape. So after he did this Genesis Revisited studio record, he did a special show, or 2 shows I think, in Japan. And he called it the Tokyo tapes. And this is a pretty rare, hard to find VHS of that concert, which I got when it came out and recently bought it again. And it shows his discography in it, because his discography is massive. And this is something special. Again, you got Steve Hackett on guitar, harmonica, which he plays a decent amount of. John Wetton, the amazing bassist and guitarist and vocalist, most famous from Asia, but he was in a version of King Crimson, Family, Uriah Heep, even played on a Wishbone Ash album, Number the Brave. And a really good solo career if you dig into it. Ian McDonald from the original King Crimson. Chester Thompson was the drummer of Genesis in the Phil Collins days. He was also played in Weather Report. And Julian Colbeck, great keyboardist. And look at the set list. It opens up with Watch Her Disguise. It's incredible. They got 2 keyboardists on that track. Riding the Colossus, Steve Hackett's solo track. Really great instrumental. He does a really cool version of Firth the Fifth. He kind of changed it on the studio record, and he does that changed version here. Instead of going into that amazing guitar solo, he kind of adds this dissonant, kind of almost jazz fusion jamming, and then goes into it, and it really works. Battle Lines is an amazing John Wetton solo track, which is great. Camino Royale is a Hackett original that he does vocals on. His vocals are a little bit lacking, but they help out with the vocal harmonies, and it's a lot better. A great version from Ian McDonald, the Quarter to Crimson King. Now, John Wetton, his vocal sounds a lot like Greg Lake in general. They have the same kind of timbre, so he can pull off Greg Lake great, and that's what he does. In the Quarter to Crimson King, you think you're listening to prime live King Crimson there. Horizons, one of my all-time favorite, if not my all-time favorite, little short classical guitar instrumental. Of course, that's the opening on side 2 of Foxtrot that goes into Supper's Ready. It's awesome. Walking Away from Rainbows, another great Hackett track. Heat of the Moment is awesome. John Wetton does an acoustic solo version of that with the help from the band, and it's great. In That Quiet Earth, an amazing instrumental from Wind and Wuthering. That's just fantastic on this. And then that goes into Vampire with a Healthy Appetite, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek Steve Hackett solo track that he kind of speaks the vocals, but the music is just outstanding on it, and this band is just unbelievable. I Talk to the Wind, another Ian McDonald King Crimson track that's just beautiful. He plays the flute on it. It's magnificent. Shadow of the Hierophant, one of the all-time great Hackett instrumentals. Should have been a Genesis track, in my opinion. It sounds like it almost like Firth the Fifth has a great guitar solo with the single notes, and it just builds up, and you just feel like you're levitating. Shadow of the Hierophant, the whole song is that. Just kind of like single note guitar solo that just builds up, and Chester Thompson is doing amazing drums, and the keyboards are so full, and you just levitate. You see God. It's fantastic. Los Endos, the amazing Genesis instrumental, originally from Trick of the Tail, great on Seconds Out. Again, he kind of changes that around, but it works really well. Black Light is a beautiful classical guitar instrumental that he kind of teases. If you're a big Genesis fan, you hear bits of The Lamb lies down in there. You hear bits of Blood on the Rooftops. Some cool stuff in there. The Steps, another awesome instrumental with the band from Hackett. And then the only downfall, the only thing that I think is a misstep is they come back for an encore do I Know What I Like, which is the first Genesis hit single from Selling England by the Pound. Not one of my favorite tracks, and doesn't really work that well on this. I wish he would release this. I have it on VHS, and it did come out on DVD at one point. But Steve, if you ever watch my videos, this is one of the greatest concerts I've ever seen in my life, and I think it's ripe for a remastering and get it out there again. They did put out a 2 CD set of the concert, and this is the 2 CD set. It's got all the songs from the video, and then they did throw on some bonuses at the end there, two extra studio tracks. I'll never understand. Look at, this is the 2 CD set, and it's fantastic, and there's no liner notes. This is the whole thing, just a couple of photographs. It's a pretty bare-bones show. It's a fairly small venue from Tokyo. I don't know where they played. Looks like it may have been done to film it and record it, so they had control. Respectful audience, just kind of watch it and clapping. But there's no notes on this thing. Both of these are long out of print. It's a shame. But in this free music world, although nothing free for me because I buy all my music, but for you fans out there, you're lucky because you could YouTube it. This is YouTube. Check out YouTube. Put in the Tokyo tapes. You could watch the whole concert for free. And maybe Steve could remaster this thing. What did I miss? Here's another live Hackett album, which is a good live album as well. He's got a ton of stuff. I think the best of what he does is what he currently does for the last decades or so, which is Genesis Revisited. He picks out a Genesis album. Next year is going to be Foxtrot. He plays the whole Genesis album. You know, it's amazing. And then he does like the best of his solo stuff. And then he always puts out a live CD and DVD. He's done Selling England by the Pound. He's done other ones as well. It's great. So there you go. A revisit for me of one of the greatest video concerts I've ever seen. Steve Hackett and the Tokyo tapes. Check it out on YouTube. Maybe one day you'll look out and get a copy of that CD because it's just awesome. What a concert. And makes me remember John Wetton, such a great musician, great singer, amazing bass player, super band. So hope you like this. Try to turn you on to some rare Steve Hackett. Great artist. And Genesis, for me, the biggest hit Genesis ever took to me is when Steve Hackett left. Not when Peter Gabriel left, because they carried on with A Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering, two of their greatest albums, and Seconds Out's one of my favorite live albums of all time. Phil Collins did an amazing job taking over. But after Steve Hackett left, they lost their originality. That's what it was. They became this great, super popular rock pop band, and their albums were fine, Abacab and the later albums, but nothing different. From 71 to 77, nobody could touch Genesis in progressive rock. Let me know what you think. Please hit subscribe. Please check out my other videos. I got a great video, I think, of the whole Genesis career. I show rare advertisements and I rank their albums. If you like Genesis or you want to check out Genesis, that's a good one. That's about it. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep rocking. I will see you on the next video. I've been really digging into the U2 album. That's the deluxe edition. And I'll do a video on my opinion on that in a day or two. Thanks for tuning. I'll see you next time on the Alan Rosenberg Show.